Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Let's take a look at what's in store today.
In this video I'm going to be talking through the build that I use for open world farming, for Elder Rifts and also for dungeons. So this build is pretty versatile, it's pretty fast as you can see on screen now, and there's a few things you can swap out to make it more powerful in dungeons as well, which is what we're going to talk through. So firstly I wanted to share this clip with it in open world so you can see exactly how this works. I'm in my favourite spot, which is Wortham, and I thought I'd show you this here because there's never any interruption from other players appearing when I'm trying to film and when I'm trying to show how things work. So you can see for this build I've got Arcane Torrent, Lightning Nova, Disintegrate and Slow Time active, and then for the primary attack I'm using Electrocute. However, in open world when you're using this build you do not need to use Electrocute at all, especially if you have the same sort of gem setup as I have for this. So I'm going to talk through all of this in a lot of detail today. We're going to test it out at the dummy to see the damage as well, and I'll show you it in a dungeon so you can see the kind of damage you get in a full party, and also how quickly you can run a dungeon solo with the same build. So I really like this. I've been using this for months now. I'm pretty sure I did make a video for it already. However, a few people keep asking me for the build that I use in open world. So I'm going to make sure I go into full details of this for the video today. Let's get started. So with this build, there are two different Paragon trees that I alternate between. So I'm going to talk through that first. So to begin with, there's the Brawler tree. So this one I use when I'm running this for Elder Rifts, open world, anything that requires my speed to be higher. And I've got the nodes active here on the right hand side, as you can see. So these are the ones that I'm using for this, and I'm going to test this build with both of the Paragon trees I'm recommending today. So we're going to test this with Brawler, and we're also going to test it with Slinger. So with Brawler, the nodes I'm using, we've got Heavy Armor, Combat Tricks, Rugged, Combat Expertise and Defender of Sanctuary. So as I said, all of the nodes on the right hand side of this Paragon tree. Now the other one that I'll be using is Slinger, and you can see the nodes that I have active for this. There's a mixture on here from different parts. So we've got Uncanny, Fury, Unseen Dynamism, Gifted and Deadly Intent. So these will basically stack your damage more. So Slinger is going to give you more damage from this build, whereas Brawler is going to give you more movement speed, and that's why I use or alternate between the two. Now Slayer tree is a potential one that you could use, however I've not yet tested this out, and I'm going to make a separate video testing this and share my findings from using this tree. I'm possibly going to be using this in Vanguard, so as I said I will test that and share a video of my findings. So firstly we're going to test out the Brawler Paragon in this build and see what damage we get. I'm going to do just a 20-second burst, and for this I am standing pretty close to the dummy. The reason for that is so that the damage from Lightning Nova registers, because it only damages when you're close to enemies or basically on top of enemies like I am with the dummy right now. So you can see I have also got the magic there from the Vanguard gear also that's activated. So in 20 seconds we've got 2.7 million damage per second. So not a huge amount of damage, but for a farm or speed build that's not too bad at all. Obviously we're not really looking at damage so much with this, we're looking at something that is fast and easy to use. So this is a build that is pretty friendly for people that are new to the game as well. So what we're going to do now is swap out Paragon to the Slinger tree. And this one, as I said, this is going to increase our damage because our skills are stacking. So with the Slinger tree, with the skills that I've got active, basically the damage stacks, and this is from using a mixture of your primary and your skill attack. So when you're using both of them, the damage will actually stack through the Unseen Dynamism that we have active with this Paragon tree. So that's what we're going to be running with. I also would like to mention at this point that I'm using the Protector Warband Buff. Now the reason that I'm using this is for the increase in your life and size. So increases your life by 6.5% and your size by 15%. This does also have damage taken reduced by 1%, reduces damage taken by 15% for 6 seconds when below 15% of your total life. And the damage taken reduced by 1% is active twice in this. However, the increased size is only active once. So that's what I would recommend trying to farm for your remnants from the Castle Sarenga, and obviously from running the Purge the Depths with your Warband. So that's what we've got active, and I'm going to be using that setup for both builds. So I just wanted to double check that we have the Slinger Paragon active before we test this. And again, I'm going to stand super close to the dummy for this test, and we're going to run for exactly 20 seconds again and see what the damage comes out as. So as you can see from using the Slinger Paragon versus the Brawler Paragon, it's given us 0.5 million damage increase per second. So this is why I generally go for the Slinger Paragon over the Brawler Paragon when I'm using this build in dungeons. A lot of people have a separate build for dungeons, but this is so easy to run and quick to run with that I like to use it for both open world, Elder Rifts and dungeons, as I already mentioned. Now, two pieces of or two legendary gems that are at the core of this build are two-star gems, believe it or not. So Viper's Bite is one of these, and this increases or this poisons your enemies with Viper's Venom. And then Pain Clasp, we're using that alongside it, which will actually help the Viper's Bite to work. So I like to use these two together. I use them in pretty much all of my builds, but how they'll work is if you don't actually instantly kill those mobs or the demons with your skills instantly, those will work together, and actually the poison will spread faster with Pain Clasp. So that is why I use that. The poison effect basically damages a lot quicker when you're using Pain Clasp alongside it. Now I will touch on all of my legendary gems and everything that I'm using towards the end of the video, but those two, as I said, they're really important in this build, and whether you're free to play or someone that spends in game, these two gems are attainable for everyone. So that is why I like to mention that. Now it does look like I've got a Seeping Bile active, but I just wanted to point out I've actually got Void Spark in that as an auxiliary gem, so I don't have the poison coming from Seeping Bile. It's literally just coming from Viper's Bite and then obviously being pushed a little further by Pain Clasp. So we're now going to run a random dungeon, and I've literally just opened it with randoms because I cannot be bothered to put a team together just for one dungeon run for this video. And we've got Destruction's End. So what I wanted to do is check the damage of this build in a party, and then we're going to compare it to running the build solo and the damage that we gain from it there, because obviously we can compare the damage output and see what kind of damage we're doing in a full party and solo with this build. Now, as you can see, it is giving quite a lot of damage. The damage numbers, the damage per second is never going to reach the same as the test dummy. And the reason for that is because obviously the damage counter in dungeons does stay active even when you're not able to do any damage. So even through cutscenes, pauses, when there's barriers up like there are in Destruction's End, the damage counter is still active, so it will never give you the same damage per second as at the dummy. However, if you've got over like 1.5 million damage per second in a dungeon, then you're doing pretty good. I accidentally tried to challenge that player to a duel there, so apologies for that. So as I said, I did run this completely with randoms, as you saw. I couldn't be bothered to put a party together, so I don't know the residence of these players, and I'm not going to bother checking either. And they're not people that I recognise. I don't think they're clans from... Oh, one of them is a clan from my server, but yeah, I don't know these players. I just thought it would be easier to run this with randoms to test it out. So Destruction's End is actually a lot better dungeon now, on a completely separate subject to build. So they changed Destruction's End with the update, and you don't have to wait so long for the barriers to be taken down anymore, and it's definitely much faster to run. I've always considered this quite a fast dungeon. It's just normally waiting for the chest at the end, so that has also been moved along for that extra bonus chest to drop instantly, and it definitely makes it a lot faster. And obviously Zoltan is at the barriers a lot faster to take them down now also, which is just much better quality of life feature, I guess, to this dungeon. Just makes it a lot easier and faster to run. And I do actually appreciate these dungeons that are pretty much one long straight line and don't have cutscenes in between them, because it makes the gaming experience a lot better, not having to wait for loading screens, etc. So we'll also be running a dungeon solo to check the time it takes and the damage dealt when you're on your own with this build. And for this I will run Destruction's End again, simply because that's the dungeon that we've got for the random dungeon, and it makes it more of a fair test when it's the same dungeon. Obviously, you know that I love Cavern of Echoes, and I do usually run that for my tests, but today, as I wanted to go with a random party, it made it much easier just to obviously run whichever dungeon came up first, and so that's what I will be doing for the second run solo as well. So we're getting close to the 200 million damage marker for this dungeon, and that's pretty impressive considering that we're in a full party. I don't think it's going to be much different when we run this solo, so I'm pretty interested to see what the results are going to be on that solo run in a second. So yeah, end of the dungeon, we've got 212 million damage dealt in the time it's taken us to complete that. We've got some extra chests here as well, because one of these people has the Returner's Boost active, so we've got some extra loot there as well. So let's now run it with a solo, or run it as a solo run, and see what damage we get and see how quickly we can actually complete the dungeon.
There you are. The demons are trying to keep us from the prize. Welcome, my friends. Come, help me strike down these demons, and we can pursue their master. Those who seek destruction shall find it. He's been weak, damn it. All that remains is a sword. Zoltan, take the others through the valley below. I will teleport to Bale and Bale.
A pitiful display. That feels better. The power of the cosmos at my fingertips.
Ally suffers. Join him in his pain.
No, thank you.
That was but a taste.
I will tear you apart, limb from limb. Paragon, do not lose faith. Victory is still within our grasp. Fighting the demon lord, I will deep come to the shield.
So there we have it. It's taken just 2 minutes and 51.6 seconds to run this dungeon solo. And with this build, we've done 292 million damage. So that is the damage, the maximum damage you can do in this dungeon due to all of the mobs. Obviously, if you get stronger mob types like elites, it will be a little bit higher damage there. Now let's take a look at the build in a little bit more detail and everything I'm using within this. Starting with the charm, the only bonus that I'm getting from this, unfortunately, is on electrocute. I did change my charm out so that I'd have a little bit more damage increase on electrocute. Then for green items, we're using 4 pieces of Vitu. So this increases the duration of all beneficial effects on you or your party members by 30%, increases the target's attack speed by 30% for 3 seconds each time you use a skill to grant a beneficial effect, which is a buff, to yourself or to a party member. So I do like to use Vitus, and I do also use Vitus or Grace in my PvP build. So we're also using 4 pieces of Grace. All continual damage, channel damage and persistent ground damage is increased by 15%. And each time you damage an individual enemy 5 times, you do 20,627 additional damage to that enemy. So using Grace also works alongside some of my gems, which 4 gems, we're using Bloodsoaked Jade, Starfire Shard, Roiling Consequence, Pain Class, Viper's Bite, Bottled Hope, Wolfure, and obviously Void Spark as an auxiliary gem inside of Seeping Bowl. Now looking at gear, I'm using some with magic bonuses, which we'll get to in a second. But starting on the helm, we've got Autumnal Crest. Slow Time now surrounds you with a static field that follows you, damaging and applying shock to all nearby enemies. Slow Time damage is increased by 18% and an additional 10% from the Awakened slot. And we've got the magic bonus here from Lightning Nova. So this increases your attack speed by 8% for 3 seconds. Now it doesn't say primary attack, so that attack speed should in theory apply to all of your skill attack speed. Now we've got 2 pieces of that active, so the other piece is on the chest, as you can see. And Lightning Nova now transfigures you into a ball of pure lightning, allowing you to move at high speed and continually deal damage to any nearby enemies. Lightning Nova damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the Awakened slot. And that is Sprite Spark that we're using on the chest. Now moving on to shoulder, we're using Filtered Defense. So for this one, we haven't got, we got the Magic Torrent magic on there, so that conjures 1 arcane bolt to orbit around you, dealing 7,433 damage. And we've got 2 pieces of that active, so that will trigger twice, so it conjures 2 bolts and you'll get that damage hitting twice from both bolts. So entropy field. Disintegrate now surrounds you with an entropy field that follows you, damaging and making nearby enemies vulnerable to critical hits. Disintegrate damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot on the shoulder as well. On pants, we're using Novel Castigation, another favourite of mine. Arcane Torrent also fires tracking missiles that seek out enemies, dealing 14,825 damage. Damage is increased by 90% and Arcane Torrent damage increased 10% from the awakened slot. We're using Rift Carver on the main hand, so with this, Arcane Torrent now creates a chaotic orb that moves with you and fires arcane missiles at random nearby enemies. Arcane Torrent damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. So basically this build is about being able to move while you're damaging enemies. We've got Frenetic Spark on the offhand, Lightning Nova cooldown decreased 18.6% and damage is increased by 10%. Eye Plucker on the alternate main hand, so this is the new essence. Electrocute critical hits also shock enemies, causing them to take 4,323 damage every second for 3 seconds. Damage is increased by 90% and electrocute damage increased 10% from the awakened slot. Now, if you missed my video, I did test this out as well, so definitely check that out. I'll link it in the comments. On the alternate offhand, Charge Stigma, Electrocute also increases your primary attack speed by 6% for 3.2 seconds, stacking up to a maximum of 5 times. Electrocute damage is also increased 10%, and we have also got 3 pieces of wired for this build. Now, another thing I'm going to show you is secondary attributes. So obviously armor penetration, potency and resistance are important, specifically armor penetration and potency within this build. I've also got 34% critical hit chance and a 17.5% increase on my attack speed and 25% increase on critical hit damage. So all of those things are also helping with this build. Now, the last thing I want to mention in this build is the bonus that I'm getting from some of my gem resonance gems. So I've got primary attack damage increased by 3% and skill damage increased by 2%. Now, I have this on 5 of my legendary gems. So that means the primary attack damage is increased by 15% and the skill damage is increased by 10% in total. So it's important to note that within this build. Obviously, gem resonance gems are super important to focus on. So if you've got the materials to do that, definitely focus on that from now on. As you know, it will help with your legendary gem upgrades, but it will also help with those bonuses. So that's it from me today. I hope you found this video helpful. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.